some questions. I'm going to make it group think. This is where war crimes are going to happen. Today, Bradley, I already gave you a notice. You are creating a question for your side. If you have no question, everybody's losing daily for 3 point. Serge, you are crafting the question for your side.
It's okay, Bradley, you paid attention.
No, I'm not.
With modern problems require modern solutions. The modern solution to this is, I'm just going to force you to make a question. Again, we are getting to more modern politics, more real presidents. You can ask anything regarding the politics. Today's going to be a quick day. I promise you that because I have nothing on the slides except for faces, except for one slide. Today we are going to introduce, and that 30 minutes starts now, by the way. Today we are going to introduce 2 new characters. The first character is us. And we're going to at least hopefully understand that as we trudge along the 19th century, we transfer this power of a citizen as a worker, where we fight for workers' rights, we want more fair working conditions, we at least want better regulation, better pay. That after World War II, we actually start to see that we dive into being a consumer. We actually find our freedom in getting things. Buying things is where we find our freedom, not actually having real freedom. Again, this is a Faustian bargain of comfortability or convenience. We have the manufacturing, at least the war effort had manufacturing. Well, now we don't have war, but we have to make things. Very cheap. Eventually, we're going to get rid of that. So, we talked about FDR. FDR passes away in office, leading Harry S. Truman to be our vice president. He is a school teacher from Missouri. He is technically corrupt by a technicality. He's grown in the Pendergast political machine. Yesterday, we talked about the political machines that at least elevate them. He plays that game. He's also the guy who's going to drop the bombs. He has a great quote. Oppenheimer, if you've ever seen the movie, Oppenheimer, one of the lead scientists of the nuclear bombs, after the bombs are dropped, is really, really sad about it. He has an interview, or at least a conversation with the president, and he leaves the Oval Office crying, with Harry S. Truman basically calling him a wuss, because he's like, dude, I dropped the bombs. Why are you crying? Why are you feeling sad? I'm the person whose choice and fault it is. Which a lot of people actually think that he's a relatively weak president, which they're kind of correct. The one thing that we have to understand when it comes to these, especially at this point in time, the turbulent time of after the World War II, if you think of power like a bucket full of water, FDR was this massive, almost dictator-like character who expanded the president's power. When you remove a character of that, much like when you remove water, what happens to the rest of the water? It fills the gap. That power is going to be controlled or gathered someplace else. In this case, it's not going to be controlled by a person. In our case, we are going to see the rise of our new character, intelligence. Now, when I say intelligence, remember that is a merger of government and crime and business. But it creates its own entity. So we have Harry S. Truman, who's not really in control of that demon, but he's going to partially warn us about the CIA. More so Dwight Eisenhower. Military man, he's going to at least sign off and say yes to a lot of them. Eisenhower, pretty good president. At least when he's out of office, JFK, Nixon, Lyndon B. Johnson, they actually really honor this guy. He's kind of like the second coming of George Washington. This general character, he's the winner of World War II for the whole globe. So we see a lot of similarities between this general and at least George Washington when it comes to people at least asking for their advice.
Didn't he make our interstates?
Interstate system. So this right here, and I gave the book to Mr. Brooks, these right here are from 1952, the counties of Iowa when they were originally created. These are just my 2 favorite places, Winnebago County where I went to college, and then Johnson County, Iowa City. Those are still the original documents. I think I gave it to Mr. Brooks, but if you wanted to see at least Eliza County, that's over there as well. But yes, correct. 1952, the interstate system. Why do you think they made the interstate system?
Because over in Germany they had a bunch of small roads they couldn't get their equipment to the big war.
Efficiency. And it was more so military efficiency, not us as the people. That's not being driven. So then explaining our intelligence. Way to go, sir. Our intelligence agency stems from this time frame. Yep. So then, in organized crime, we start to see these networks. What I mean by networks is you have a head boss. Almost think of like a Ponzi scheme that we talked about yesterday. You have a head boss, a mafioso, if you will, who then there's second level management. Those guys then have the, let's say, the muscle. The muscle is then going to at least follow the orders. Again, you have these small militias, if you will. We just call them gangs. It's from this network that the Office of Naval Intelligence, which is where at least most of our intelligence agencies stem from, 1941, 1942, the Navy is going to essentially create a friendship with this organized crime network in order to use them as spies. Now we use this essentially in World War I, but it's legitified in World War II. We get most of our information of at least Italy and German, at least information, I guess, from this network of spies that is stemmed in crime. So this is where we start to see this merger, again, of intelligence and crime and a little bit of business. So this is going to then be merged into the OSS. During World War II, we create a special organization unit called OSS, the Office of Strategic Services. This is essentially a precursor to what's going to be known as the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency. Outside of World War II, it only takes about a year or two before the CIA actually develops, but this is where we're going to see, honestly, a lot of tools that we see. The first one's going to be drug cartels. They are going to be traffickers of not just drugs, but of individuals. Can somebody tell me why? Take a guess.
Because to make money.
Bingo. Why do they need money? I know, yeah.
Why not? Money has power.
True, why not?
Money has power.
True. Anybody have any real guess?
I don't even know the question.
So you have to think, if this is the government needs some problems solved. How do they solve said problem? Well, first off, they're going to have a government contract. We need to make roads, so we have a contract that needs to be fulfilled. Let's say that contract is $50 million. We are willing to spend $50 million for new roads. All of a sudden, you have company A, B, and C who are then going to have a bidding war. Sergio, I feel like we've talked about this when it comes to like construction bids. It works the exact same way.
Sergio, ask a question about construction. Come on now. Shoot one.
Nope, not yet. Not yet. It's the end. Remember, your team is it rests on your hands. But you have to think, these individuals are fighting for the contract. Well, eventually they're not going to fight for that contract. It's just going to be given to them. Now, in terms of drug cartels, these government contracts, especially for the DoD, Department of Defense, they can only give money to so many organizations, at least legally speaking. Most of the time, the CIA, or at least their clandestine operations, are not on those budgets. So they have to get money in other means. So this is where, if there's legitimate business that we've talked about, there is then illegitimate business, which is crime. This then fits a perfect repertoire of intelligence. Now, they are not necessarily trafficking drugs to America at this point in time. They will be, and a guy named Gary Webb's going to find that out in 1982, and he's going to get 2 bullets in the back of his head. Rule of suicide. But this is where we start to see the trafficking of drugs and individuals. Specifically, to make money. Because they're not being given these programs, or at least government projects, contracts, they have to make their own money off the books. This is where they see illegitimate crime as a reason for so. They have the connections. Now, we have drug cartels. Most of the drugs coming into the United States, we know about. We're profiting from. Now, with at least the fentanyl in Mexico coming up here, that's more of small budget cartels. Those are not massive game players. In Mexican politics, they're massive game players, but in the world of drug, America's the best. And China. China's doing a really good job. They're kind of beating us a little bit. But then we go into human trafficking, or more so just trafficking. The movement of people. This one's a new one, and it didn't put a good taste in my mouth, but Georgia Tann, the Tennessee Children's Home Society scandal. For 20 years, 1930, 1950, what's happening is this orphanage, specific to this children's home, they are selling orphans. Again, the bottom level of society, the people that are easiest to go off the books, that's who's being targeted. That's going to be the system put in place here. And it's not until we get to relatively the 60s to 80s that we're going to see a connection of these missing people to intelligence by means of programming people, trying to make super soldiers. And although that might seem like a Marvel movie plot, that's real life. We only know this on accident thanks to Watergate scandal, where Nixon at least tried to cover up something. Which he does that relatively successful, and then somebody drops a document that alludes to the findings of MKUltra, which was an attempt of trying to see if you can reprogram humans' mind to make them do whatever you want. So what they're doing, and Ted Krasinski, the Unabomber, ultimately was one of these targets as a 16-year-old kid at Harvard. What they would do is they would get sugar cubes that were just LSD, and then give it to a person unexpectedly. Ultimately, the goal is, in these altered states of consciousness, can people be programmed to do something that's either against their will, or something that's an idea that can just be obtained, to make a super soldier. Now, MK Ultra ultimately fails at this, but Project Monarch doesn't. Project Monarch's able to do this. The following program from it, this is in 65 to 70. This is where they are targeting people who have high levels of trauma. Because not only do they find that through drugs that you can be manipulated, that's what we find out so far in MK Ultra, which on top of that, this is where we see a direct connection with drug usage and human trafficking, especially with people who are quote-unquote victims of doing the abuse. They're just being drugged and then kind of forced to do not great things. But Monarch is where we find the power of trauma. If I can legitimately traumatize you enough, I can break your personality or your ego down to a point that you will then be malleable like clay. Even if you hate me as much as possible, if I torture you enough, you will do what I say. That's what we find out here. Now, who do we find this out from? You do have to remember that after World War II, most of the Nazis go split to the United States and Russia. We know this because it's an operation known as Paperclip.
I thought they went to Argentina.
Well, so that's where some escapees go. Some escapees aren't good enough to play the game anymore, so they just flee. Now, this is where Werner von Braun, he's a SS high-level Nazi scientist. He's going to be the head of NASA. So NASA, at its inception, is a Nazi organization. Now, granted, we still have Americans, and they're kind of helping us. This is where we have so many immoralities, so many injustices during World War II, but so much potent information that's very, very useful. And this is where, again, the name of the game is not morality. The name of the game is power. And in this case, intelligence and intel, information, from the opposing side, especially, let's say they do have Diglaki, which is at least a declassified document to say that they might have had UFOs. Who knows? We want that information. We want to know exactly what they know. All those twin studies where they put two twins in a room and they would basically poke one with a knife to see if the other one felt it, we want to know what their findings are. That's why we're taking them on our side. This is going to be the era of intelligence. This is where we also start to see, at least the next slide with JFK, this intelligence operation gets stronger than the presidency. The president's not in charge of this thing. As soon as the president wants to shut it down, they get rid of him. JFK gets rid of. But we also see in the 70s, Brother Paul's case. Not only does it limit to children's homes, but then we get the church involved. On top of that, the Franklin scale